What's up, y'all? This is In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 28. So, today is the 4th of January, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. That's Frank, the guitar that you heard there. At In the Image Clothing Company, we have three sides to us. The main company side of things, where we discuss the anatomy of the human body and clothing and what those things are doing to each other. We are called In the Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. And at our second side of our company, we have In the Image Clothing Company Music. And then over here, we have In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. Not necessarily in that order, but let's get a little rundown of what In the Image Clothing Company is, and then we'll get into this podcast episode. We let the body work. We allow the body to work. That's our key word. Always is allow. And we do that mostly through clothing because it's the only thing placed physically on us at all times. So it has the highest potential out of anything that we could ever possibly come in contact with in our lives to alter our bodies. And we allow it to stay centered and fit correct, to just allow the body to just have its natural function rather than being in these constant chronic patternings that we get into. Myself has been one of those people who have gotten into the patternings that we get into because clothing designs are pretty much all the same. Tying our shoes unevenly changes our whole body traveling up. So, clothing for everybody, man or woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age. Pants need to be entirely above the hips, so they're just off of your hips, and your hips have all their natural motion and function. It's slightly higher in the front than in the rear with the waistband, because that way our core, which needs to contract to activate, can be, as it would always naturally be, activated. There'd be no reason the core wouldn't be activated unless something external was altering it. And then the tops that we wear, the seams on the top need to sit behind that little bone that's the other end of the collarbone, and that just allows our shoulders to be in their neutral positions, and then right at the very edges of the shoulders for those edge seams. Now, two things that I always say are prerequisites just to allow the body to have a chance to be unaltered, aside from / in addition to just having clothing sit where it needs to. Lacing the shoes that we wear with the technique that In the Image Clothing Company uses, which you can find anywhere you find In the Image Clothing Company. Being 2025, we have the internet and you can find us. With that technique includes to tie your shoes evenly over toward the inside on both feet so that you have an even foundation traveling up the rest of your body. And then the second prerequisite is to remove all tags from clothing. Anywhere a tag is placed within clothing, that includes the tongues of the shoes or anywhere within the shoes. If you can't get them out, you can just roughen them up, put slits into them with a knife or scissors. But we don't want anything slippery within our shoes affecting our ankle flexion or our natural arches within our feet. So that is what we are. That is In the Image Clothing Company's whole little intro spiel. And yeah, there we go. Doing that little intro with Frank the guitar was different. I like that though. I like that. So, on this episode of the podcast, I want to talk about vegetarianism. And here's why. Yes, this podcast is about the gospel of Jesus Christ, but the gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things. If you're talking about anything that's actually real, you're talking about the gospel. And I'm going to get into vegetarianism because I'm a vegetarian. And I'm not going to be trying to be pushy necessarily. I'm not going to try to convert people to start, eating only anything besides meat, which we're going to get into why I worded it that way. But yeah, I'm not going to try to necessarily convince anybody within this of anything. But I do want to talk about some things that are very beneficial and some things that are just undisputed, no matter what your opinion on it is, or if you feel you would want to be vegetarian, or if you think it matters or changes anything or anything. We'll just talk about stuff that's just really just how it is when it comes to vegetarianism. So, I have been entirely vegetarian. No cheat days, no cheat meals, no nothing like that. Entirely vegetarian since February 2024. So it's been around 11 months, and Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It changed my life. And I'm not trying to, yeah, see, because that's true, but I'm not trying to make some kind of like, like, it's this miracle thing. I just want to be real about it. Because I used to eat meat. Actually, I used to eat quite a lot of meat. Back when well, especially when I worked at a grocery store that I worked at for a couple years, I would buy a lot of pork chops, buy a lot of chicken breasts. I'd buy a lot of frozen packaged spicy chicken breaded pieces. I would eat a lot of meat. I'd eat steaks quite a bit, just throw steaks in a skillet. Usually I'd cut them up into little strips or little pieces, put them in a skillet with vegetables. I'd just buy a package of frozen vegetables and throw it in with those and butter. And I'd eat a lot of meat back then. And back then, meaning up until when I stopped eating meat, meat was a big part of what I ate. And when I went vegetarian, I'm gonna come at it like this because I don't it's not I don't want to say this out of just sharing my own experience so you guys can listen to my story. Some of that might be beneficial and there's no problem with just sharing my story, but I want to mostly gear this around just talking about it as what it is despite anybody's experience with it, if you will. Because let's just look at the human body and let's look at the way that we absorb nutrients from what we eat. That's really the big thing. When we eat food, the whole point is to absorb the nutrients, the minerals, and the whatever we have in food that our bodies are going to use for nourishment and for energy. That's really the only reason we're actually eating. So, if you take any kind of food, it needs to be broken up pretty much as small as you can get it to fully extract everything out of it that you can. And with meat, if we compare meat to really anything else, nuts, grains, fruits, vegetables, pretty much anything that's not like the flesh of an animal, it's just so different. Flesh has nerve endings in it. It has so much fibrousness to it. It's got DNA in it. It's got, we can talk about anything like that just as far as what actual flesh is, which is meat. That's what we're eating. I'm not just trying to like mock it or laugh at it, but it's just so different than anything else that we could eat. It's something that's been alive in the way that it's been moving, contracting. That's all it is muscle, unless we're eating like organs. But even in that sense, it's so different than anything else that we could eat. And plants don't move the way that animals do. Their muscles contract and elongate, they extend and they flex and they do a lot of things, man. This was once a living, breathing, moving critter at one time. And you have every choice to eat that. I'm not saying that as if like, feel bad because you're killing an animal. But I am saying it's so different. It's flesh. There's nothing else that you could eat that's going to do anything for you at all, or not, that's anything like eating the flesh of a living, breathing thing. So if we were to think about just getting what we're putting into our bodies as small as we possibly can to fully extract all the nutrients that we can get out of it, just because that way is the most beneficial for us to even be eating, you try to take anything that's not meat and like grind it up, puree it, blend it up, whatever you use to get it to as small as you can, you're going to be able to get pretty much anything smaller than you will meat. Because meat is it's an animal, dude. Human beings we're not animals. We are different, but very, very similar in a lot of ways. It's just like, it's weird. You think about taking a bite out of your bicep. essentially the same thing you're doing when you're eating a steak or a chicken breast or any piece of an animal. It's weird. Some people see that as obvious as it is, but some people don't even really realize that. So it makes me laugh, dude, for real, because it's weird. I got to the point, actually, I didn't choose to be vegetarian, but I got to the point where I just couldn't eat meat anymore. At times in my life, I at least claimed that I loved it. I don't know if I did or if it's just because it seemed like something that was like a treat, because you hear people talk about, a rack of ribs or a whole big 8-ounce steak. And, it's just like, it's this thing that people just, at least here around where I live, I live in the United States of America right now. That's how people approach meat a lot of the time. Hamburgers are huge for Americans. So, I mean, yeah, I've eaten tons and tons of hamburgers throughout my life. A lot of hamburgers. But um it is weird. We, we I think that's one big thing that doesn't allow people to fully chew their food is eating meat, because you kind of can't unless you take like 10 minutes, and that's not even an exaggeration, per bite, like something like a steak. If you were to chew steak as thoroughly as you really should be chewing your food for it to digest, ideally, it would take you a very, very long time per bite. When I eat very properly and I chew super thoroughly. I chew for minutes, something that's pretty easily broken down. Allow it to fully be coated by saliva, because saliva breaks down fats and carbohydrates before it even gets into your body farther than your mouth. Meat, you can't really do that with the same. And so what it'll kind of do is cause you to start chewing less thoroughly, because you just can't with it. It's too tough. Unless you, like I'm saying, seriously just take so long to eat, but it would take you like 2 hours to eat a steak with no sides or no anything else with it, just to thoroughly chew that thing in a way that it can actually be fully utilized within your body. These are things that I just didn't know and didn't understand and didn't do before. So the thing with vegetarianism is that's a big part of it. It's the way that it helps your digestive system just be able to work is a lot of that is just coming from how you can chew it so thoroughly, because then it's already broken down so well that your body can just extract the nutrients that it needs from it easier. It'll process through your body, just physically pass through your body easier because it's already small. And everything will just work much more efficiently within your body that way. Because I eat, and when I'm saying what I do within this, is that the things I'm going to say that about, it's not just about me, it's because of this, what I'm talking about. I mean, this would apply to anybody to whatever degree it would. But yeah, it'll cause you to eat so much less, meaning need to eat less and still be fully nourished and have enough energy. Because what ends up happening when you don't fully chew your food is your body uses a lot of energy to break down the food into smaller pieces, but it like can't really do that. There's nothing within your body that's like teeth are as far as the digestive system goes. There's acids, and sure, the digestive tract can kind of like press against it, and there's muscles that contract in there, but there's nothing like teeth once you get past them. Your teeth are what you are supposed to use to really, really, really break down the food. And so meat's a whole different thing, man. I don't eat very much anymore, and I'm pretty skinny. I'm just naturally pretty slender as well, just my skeletal frame. Even if I were to put on muscle mass on top of my frame, I'm just slender, structured. Like, look at my wrists. If you're listening to this only in audio form, you can't see, and that's fine. But I'm 6'2", but I'm somewhere around 150 pounds currently. I'm 25 years old, just for kind of reference of, so you can just kind of understand what I'm saying. I don't eat very much, but I have full energy. And a lot of that is just what we do within the company, just keeping the body centered and keeping your core active. If your core is not active, which is just how it works, your core is the center of your whole body, and your body won't even be anywhere near working at every end of it, meaning both ends from your core, from your core up to what you could either say is the top of your head or your fingertips, because that's really what would be at the other end going up, or from your core down to the toes, like the ends of your feet. Your body's not going to work in any of those places if your core is deactivated. And so just, yeah, I mean, doing what we do within clothing and just the positions of the body, we approach the skeletal system. That really helps you just be able to eat so much less, because then your body's just functioning correct the way that it was designed to. But even in that case, if you still aren't chewing your food thoroughly, and if you're just eating meat, and that's something that just takes so much effort for your body to try to break down, then you're going to eat a lot more than you actually need to be able to feel like you have enough energy. So vegetarianism, what I was starting to say is it's not something that I chose at all. I was getting grossed out and I was chewing meat and I just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I was like gagging on it. And I started to look at animals different. I just started to wake up, for real. A lot of stuff started to change. And yeah, I mean, you drink less water too. I don't, as of now, even drink plain water, because I talked about that before, but it's about hydration, not about the amount of water we have, because there's actually nothing within water that hydrates you. Water just is something your body uses for functions, keeping things lubricated. But what comes within hydration is the minerals within water, electrolytes, sodium, potassium, things like that, magnesium. So when you're eating meat, though, and you have the body just working harder to digest it, that's one thing that could make you feel more thirsty. But also, just the water content within meat is less than fruits and vegetables. Things like nuts and grains, there's probably less water in than meat. But fruits and vegetables are mostly water, to the point where they give you pretty much all the liquid you'd need just eating those, without having to supplement it with anything that you're drinking. And with meat, it's just such a different thing, like I'm saying, for the body to try to digest. And it is pretty dry, even if you get meat that, because like I used to cook pork chops, and I would put them in a skillet, and I'd put like a lot of butter on them. I love butter. And they'd be pretty juicy, but there's not much actual like hydration that's coming from that. So yeah, I'm just thinking about it now. I mean, I've thought about the whole thing I'm going to kind of discuss, but this term, I'm just thinking about meat sweats. I've heard that term before, and I understand that more now than ever. I mean, I understood it in the past because, yeah, that would happen, but people will be eating meat and they'll sweat. That's another thing. And I don't know, as of like right now, I can't just fully say it's mostly because of this or mostly because of that, but all the things that I'm doing definitely are playing into this. But I wonder how much of it is just because I stopped eating meat. I don't sweat. Like, I don't sweat at all. it's I told you the date, but about, 6 months ago, it was summer here in the United States of America, the state of Utah. We get summers between 98 and 100 degree Fahrenheit is, common range for parts of the summer. Pretty darn warm. And I'd be going on 12-mile walks on this river trail just about every single day, and I wouldn't sweat. I also wouldn't drink water. This is weird. It's really strange because, as I said at the start, like, I'm not trying to push vegetarianism, but that's why I want to make this episode. Other than this is a great thing to talk about, it's a personal experience from me, the founder, and it's also just discussing things, ideally just as they are, without my opinions. But I almost am recommending it. I mean, I really am, without trying to be like pushy, because it changed my life. I mean, a lot of things have been changing my life recently, and really it's just, being more devoted to Christ, and things are just happening as they are. I'm not making these decisions like I'm saying, but yeah, it did. So when I would go on these walks, man, I wouldn't sweat. It'd be hot outside, and you think about that term meat sweats, and I remember that for sure. I mean, after you sit there and eat something like a steak, you feel like you're sweating, man. Meaning you end up sweating, and that's what it was from. And I don't know as of right now exactly how we can like describe what exactly is doing that, but a big part of it is what I'm saying about it just being something that's more difficult for the body to digest. So that is huge because I used to sweat quite a bit. I also used to have different habits. I mean, I would drink just so much water that, wasn't actually aiding my body in any way. It was just going through me and coming out of my pores as well, through sweat. But I used to sweat a lot, and I just, I mean, I really don't, like, pretty much at all. I mean, it's so very rare for me to even have, like, any perspiration at all now, really. And that's definitely, at least a huge part of that is from what I'm talking about, going vegetarian. And it's a strange thing because I heard people in the past, because I wouldn't, I don't think that anybody needs to ever diet, like, quote unquote, as in that's what you're looking at, what you're doing as, because being vegetarian isn't a diet. It's not. It's just a choice of what you're eating, and at least in my case, it's just a permanent thing. A diet, to me, and I don't want it to be about, like, my opinion of it, but I mean, I really think that's what a diet is. It's something you do for, like, a specific time to try to, like, have a certain amount of results happen, and then maybe you stop for a while or maybe forever after that. So that's not what being vegetarian is at all. But I do remember people talking about diets in the past and hearing them say they felt lighter, like physically they felt lighter. And yeah, that's how it is being vegetarian. And I think that's a pretty universal thing that everybody would experience because of what I'm saying. Meat just digests differently. It's just entirely different for the body to have to. I really want to word it this way. It's like the body has to figure out what to do with it. Because that's how it seems now, like thinking back on how I felt when I was eating meat. It's like something you're having to like push through your body from the start to the finish when it comes back out. That's how it feels as it's inside you. And you can't really understand that with contrast unless you stop eating meat and see what it's like without it. It is weird because that's what I mean. I don't care to try to convince somebody to be vegetarian out of like my doings, but out of my experience, I would recommend it for everybody. Yeah. Because there's reasons people do it, I mean, people love animals. I'm somebody who loves animals, and that is one of the reasons. But regardless, just what it's doing to the physical body, you don't have to have any kind of belief or any kind of view or opinion on it to feel quite a lightness within you physically, because your digestive system can just flow. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is weird. It's so weird because I used to look at meals as like an event, and a lot of people do that, where you kind of plan out a time and you sit down and you have a plate and you put things on there and you eat it. I mean, like, the way that I'm describing it to a lot of people are like, well, yeah, that's what a meal is. But to me now, I haven't even done that in, oh, shoot. I mean, being a little bit reserved with not trying to over exaggerate it, probably 6 months. I mean, there's been around Christmas time, we went to a restaurant and sat down and ate, and that was the first time I did that in a long time. Like, there's certain times, but as far as just like that was what I just thought about doing when it came to eating, it's been so long since I've had that approach, because I'll just eat as and when I need to. Usually I'm just standing, and it's just something that now I can do as something that my body is just asking for. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll eat something, rather than, I feel like it's almost an obligation when you sit down and like try to have like a set out time to eat, and it's weird. I don't know. I mean, and that's something that being vegetarian really has changed for me. Not just that I, in like a separate way of discussing it, have changed my way on eating, but vegetarianism is really what allowed that to just happen, because I think that's a big part of why people sit down like they do to eat, because if you're chewing meat, you kind of gotta like sit there, and also it makes you feel heavy. That's what I'm saying. And so it's like, if you're standing and eating, which is just so natural for the body to do, and you're trying to eat meat, you kind of feel like, oh shoot, I gotta sit down, you know? I'm pretty sure just about everybody who's hearing this can relate to that, even if you've like thought about it or not. And that's the thing, is a lot of times we just don't think about it. It's just like what we're used to doing in the time. That's weird. That's really weird. So, yeah, being vegetarian, because I don't want to have my own definition of what vegetarianism but what I would really say is vegetarianism, quote unquote, at just like its basis, is pretty much just eating anything besides meat. I mean, you can get all sorts of like subcategories as specific as you want, and you can get as specific as you want with whatever you want. But then at that point, I feel like it becomes more of like a diet than just you don't eat animals, because that's as simple as it gets with like how vegetarianism really is at its baseline, and that's what I approach it as. It's just, no, I just don't eat meat. Anything that doesn't have meat pretty much is fair game. I mean, I'm very intentional about what I eat, but yeah, it's yeah, vegetarianism, man. I mean, that's just the thing, is animals are different than everything else. You have to take a life to eat that. And I don't care. I mean, I'm not trying to get anyone to get on board with any kind of belief or opinion about like animal rights or, cruelty or what things are meant to be used for. I'm not trying to say that within this episode of this podcast right now at all. But I am just saying, if we're just looking at it as what it is, like I was discussing toward the beginning, it's flesh. And nothing else that we eat is like that at all. So it's just different, is all I'm saying. I mean, whether it's good or bad, or him or her is right about it, or it's cruel, or if it's completely humane, or if that's what animals are for, or if, you know what I mean, whatever. I'm not saying that within this. But it does do a lot to your body. It really changes you. Those are the main things. You feel so much physically lighter. You don't sweat as much. You stay so much more hydrated. You go to the bathroom so much easier because everything's just flowing through you easier, because it's so much less I don't want to put a word on it and use like a word that, has to be exactly what it is, but, it's just not meat. Meat is so unique and something we'd put into our bodies. So I think the big thing with making this an episode of the podcast, or my intention on it right now and having this episode be recorded right now, is we are in the Image Clothing Company, and we allow, keyword, the body to work. And anything that we're doing that is like fighting the body's natural workings is going against the only thing that it actually does. And I don't want to say this only out of my experience, because I'm almost certain that every single human who would try to stop eating meat would have the same experience. That once you do, your body just functions easier. So, coming at vegetarianism as a whole, as just what it is, meaning just no meat, discussing that within this episode of the podcast from In the Image Clothing Company's allowing the body to work side of things, that's what I'm saying mostly, is just the body's a machine. It's just a mechanical machine. It has an electrical system, it has the skeletal system, it has musculature, it has the digestive system, the respiratory system, the circulatory system, every system that you can mention. It's just a machine with functions. And how those functions are going to be allowed to happen is by being fueled. All food is the fuel that our bodies use to do their operation. So when it comes to being vegetarian, and I'm very, very confident in saying that everybody will have a very, very similar experience with being vegetarian that I am describing within this, as far as the ease of operation within their body will be greater. That's what I'm saying about vegetarianism in this episode of the podcast, because in every aspect, we just need to do all that we can to get in touch with this thing that we've been given. It's our bodies. And that's something that's, I'm going to say it this way. This is just the case. That's something that will be harder for every human if you are eating meat. So, I don't want that to be an opinion, but that's just, if you were to try stopping meat entirely, I want to say it like this as well, because it can potentially seem like something to do. Like, man, I don't know. When am I going to be able to do that? Some people might be saying, like, stop eating meat. That's like a whole thing, man. It's not. It's not hard for me to avoid, quote unquote, eating meat. It's not an avoidance. It's just, I know what I eat and I just do that. Now, depending on where you most commonly eat and how you get your meals and how they're prepared and if they're made by somebody else and whatever, and what part of the world you're in, because I understand a lot of people, they eat meat because it's a necessity. Certain parts of the world and certain people, they have to hunt or else they wouldn't eat. They would literally just go hungry and starve because they don't have enough grains or vegetables or fruit around them to actually fully fuel their bodies. And I understand that for sure. And so that's why it's like the whole kind of both sides of it. I'm not trying to tell you to, that it's the right thing to do, but I'm also telling you it's going to be beneficial, because for some people, at least in their current situation, it's just not something they could even do. They don't have access to enough food to even keep them alive if they weren't eating meat. So that's why it's like, it's something that's kind of, it just can't be a cut and dry thing. So, yeah, I get that. I do get that. I really do. But I do think that there's this common idea that being vegetarian doesn't give you like as much nutrients, especially here in the United States. I know that it's like a very American thing. I was mentioning that, to like eat meat, bacon and hamburgers and the 4th of July, which is within the United States of America, that's, we celebrate our Independence Day. That's like our country's birthday, It's so common to have barbecues and have racks of ribs and steaks, and people get these smokers and they smoke meat to get like the wood flavor into it. It's like a whole thing, I think, for Americans especially, to eat meat. And so I think a lot of that is just a belief that has come where people have heard it so often that, you got to get your protein in and eat your steaks and you'll be all big and strong and healthy like me. I heard that all the time, man, from just elders, if you will, men who were just middle-aged or older men. It's just something that has been said so much around here. But then you've got people in other parts of the world who their whole culture is vastly majority vegetarian, and those people are healthy and strong and live long lives. And a lot of that is just a belief that you have to have meat to like be strong, to build muscle, because of what I'm saying. It really does kind of bog your body down pretty darn well universally. I can't really say that for everybody, and without people actually trying it, I guess we wouldn't know for everybody if that would be the case. But I'm pretty darn confident that I can say that. It kind of bogs you down physically. It like slows your whole system and just about every aspect of your body's function. So I think that's just a misconception that really needs to be understood, that it is a misconception, because I have way more energy now than any time eating meat, no doubt. I mean, from the time that I stopped eating it up until back until I was born, like my whole life is what I'm saying. Until I stopped eating meat, I was eating meat pretty commonly, like almost with every meal. And yeah, no, I've never had the amount of energy that I have now, and strength naturally. I don't do any workouts and things, But it's like what I started this out with. I don't want it to sound like some kind of miracle thing. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I am just saying that it does the things that I'm saying it does for the body. It really does. So, you'll see it though. Shoot, this is, yeah. Oh man, it's real. You can see it in people's skin. I mean, just in their face even. And yeah, you can see it. You can see what meat does to them. Well, you can see it in, like, if I look at photos or videos of myself back before I was vegetarian, and then just me now, you can see it. Because, like I'm saying, it's just different. It's just a different thing than anything else that you would place into your body. And the way that it gets digested is so different. So you can see it in people's skin, man. I don't know how to really describe that as of right now, but I can see it. Kind of like how I can see patternings within people's physical function that's caused by clothing, but I can't quite tell you it. You have to kind of have like an eye for it. But it's kind of like how, I'm not going to say that. I'm not holding anything back, but that's just a little different thing to talk about. But yeah, you can tell, because like I was saying, people who definitely hunt for nutrients, like that's pretty much their main source of nutrients, is just hunting. Around here it'd be deer and bear in certain parts of the world. Well, I said world, but in certain parts of our country here, elk. A lot of people hunt these animals, and that's their main source of food for most of the year, and then they'll freeze the meat. And it's just a natural thing for them, as in something they're just used to, something that they've been doing in that part of the world or within their family for generations. And, a big thing is parts of the world where there's so much snow, because if you've got so much snow and most of the year, or all of the year even, then you can't really grow fruits and vegetables. You pretty much can't. Places like Alaska, which is in the United States of America, and That's what I'm going to say for sure, because that's one that I know of for sure. I don't want to just talk about other places that could potentially, but yeah, because they're, in Alaska, they do a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing as well, because Alaska, the borders the ocean, or the ocean's on the edge of Alaska. It's not like in the main land. So the ocean doesn't freeze over in the winter, and so they go out and they fish, a lot of fishing and yeah, hunting. And then they'll freeze their food, meaning just their meat, and that's how they sustain themselves through the rest of the time that they're not, gathering food. They have it just frozen. And in those places as well, even if you don't have like an actual freezer, you can put it just in ice or snow outside and it'll stay preserved. So there's exceptions, right? And there's reasons to eat meat. And I think that's a big thing to be very clear on. Like I was saying, how I'm not trying to push it, and I'm not trying to even, whether my opinion's here or there or what. That's not what I'm saying within this episode of the podcast, because I'm not trying to within this. Not that yeah, just want to be very clear. I'm just talking about as it is. I'm not trying to push like animal rights or being humane or not and stuff, because the biggest reason why I'm saying that, it's not to cover myself, because I can believe whatever I want about that, and I can have the opinions that I want about that, but that first of all doesn't dictate anybody else's ability to do what they're going to do, but also is not about that, because yeah, it's just not about that. I think, well, oh no, yeah, that's where I was going. The biggest thing is I don't want people to think that they are either going to listen to me or not, because of this whole preconceived idea that we can get into about, similar to what I was saying, Americans usually, will be like, you have to eat meat to be big and strong. Americans usually, and yeah, I'm kind of judging Americans. I'm an American, so, you know, in this aspect is what I'm saying. I'm kind of judging it because it's so common for them to be like, kind of talking down on people who are vegetarian, and that's why. That's what I'm correlating that with, is because of the whole eat your meat and be big and strong, and so if people don't eat meat around here, it's mostly just a belief and a cultural thing, thinking that you're like blank. I'm not going to put a word, but people will put words on people who don't eat meat because they're different, and so it's just an instant judgment, and they don't even understand what's happening within the human body, right? So that's huge. But also, I mean, especially United States of America, we founded this country, as far as the Americans that are now, who are mostly the ones living in this country, the people that are now Americans, quote unquote, founded the country. People lived here before, but yeah, because that's a whole discussion in itself. I'm not trying to have some kind of like side to that, but I just mean the people who are now modern day Americans that live in the United States of America, they came across the plains, and it was all the cowboy movies, and the westernism, what westernism? Yeah, I mean, like the western movies, you got like cowboys on horses and guns and hunting, and that's just like, that was like the culture of what is now modern day America. So again, that's a big part of where it comes from, the views on what vegetarianism is. Because if you go over to like India, I don't know as of right now the like percentages, but I think it's a pretty big percent of the population of India is vegetarian. And it's just so natural for them over there. That's just one country that I know of that is that way. And I bet there's so many parts of the world that are like that. So that's a big thing, is just, it's a lot of it's just who you're around and where you live and what has been the quote unquote norm for X amount of time. So yeah, people people aren't comfortable a lot of times with what they're not familiar with. So yeah, because I mean, I think the big thing is, yeah, if somebody from India were listening to this episode of the podcast, episode 28 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast on vegetarianism. They might be like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, my family's been vegetarian for generations. Half the block is, the people that live around us. Like, it depends on the part of the world as well. So resources, culture, upbringing, necessity, beliefs, all that kind of stuff, tradition. But really, it's just, ideally we can look at our human bodies and do all that we can to just let them function the best that we can. So that's mostly where I'm coming at this from. I mean, I will say, not that you have to care about my opinion or my view, but I will say, I do really care about animals a lot. I love animals, and I always have, and even in the times when I ate meat, I did as well. But I'm always changing, and I'm different now, and even deeper in my understandings of certain things now. But yeah, I don't want you to have to think you need to listen to my opinion, because you don't. But there is a lot that happens with animals. I'm going to put this in here as well. I kind of want to hit this from just a lot of different angles, because again, this is just truth. There's just a lot of stuff that happens with animals to where, regardless of if you think animals even have a soul or deserve to be treated well or what, I mean, if you can just look at it with the respect of that's going to provide nutrients to you, like I'm talking about people who do hunt, and they do it to just actually sustain themselves. Usually these kind of people, if they go out there and they kill an animal, they'll kind of sit there and they'll I'm not saying you have to do this or what, but it's very common for people who are really in touch with just what's actually happening within being able to eat another being. They'll sit there with the animal after they've killed it and just kind of thank the animal or thank God for giving this nutrients to them. And see, because that's the thing, is just it's a lot of it really comes down to the approach of why and how you're actually consuming what you are. Because in modern day 2025, we have such a consumer culture, broad spread across the world in most cases, but especially here in the United States of America. And I can speak for it. That's where I am. That's what I've been around my entire life. It's what I conceive out of personal experience, so I can say that. And that's just what it is here, for sure. Now, time, for sure. But yeah, I mean, chicken is just something that's so mass produced. And that's a weird word to put on an animal, but that's the case. And cows as well. I've spent a little bit of time on some cow farms, and I've been around, because yeah, I mean, I've had some personal experience to a degree within this kind of stuff, to where they really do, because the demand's so high. You walk in a grocery store in the United States of America, just what I can speak for right now, and you've got just milk always there, and multiple kinds of it, levels of fat within the milk that they've processed in certain ways. And you've got chicken. It's just you go to the store and you just know there's going to be chicken there. At least around where I live right now, there's no doubt. I mean, you go there and you've just got packages of chicken breasts, packages of chicken legs, packages of wings, packages of thighs, and then you've got pork chops, and you've got steaks, and you've got all different kinds of steaks, sirloin, tri-tip, round, whatever they call those, the round top steaks. I don't know, something round. I feel like there's a reason to actually try to say that right. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you've just got all sorts of things. And then you've got fillets of fish, and it's just, they're just there. But the thing with that is, especially things like chicken and milk, those things, and I drink milk, and I'm not trying to say you shouldn't eat meat. I'm just saying, again, I'm just trying to discuss this as it is. The level of demand for all this kind of stuff, because it's just constantly stocked in a store. And people also just don't finish their food. Not only do they not chew it, so they're eating so much more than they need to, but people don't finish their food. And that's what happens. Wow, this is amazing. I love this episode, because that's what happens so often when people will sit down, like I was discussing earlier, and like I'm not saying this is wrong, but this happens. You'll have you'll sit down with a plate and you'll put your plate and you'll get all this food before you know how much you're going to actually need within your body. You put onto a plate and sit down. You've usually put more there than you'll actually eat. And so a lot of that actually just gets thrown away. And so that's a big thing, is regardless of what we're coming at food with, what angle or direction or belief or opinion or way of looking at it we have, if we're just wasting food, then we're just wasting food, no matter what. There's no side to have with that. So that happens so much for those reasons, right? We'll just load plates up before we even know if we're going to need that much. And then so rare for people to actually, at least around here, again, what I can speak for people to actually save their food. Or like at a restaurant, you walk in, you sit down, you got a big steak and you've got potatoes and carrots and whatever else is there. And if you don't finish it, it's so common for people to just leave it there. And it just gets thrown away. They won't take it home a lot of the time and eat it later. And the people at the restaurant don't eat it later. They just throw it away. When I've worked at restaurants, you just go around and pick up the plates and chuck them in the trash and then clean the dishes. So that's a big thing. Now let me take that back to what I was saying, because I love this so much. This is great to document, because within the stores, when there's that much abundance of chicken on the shelves, these chickens aren't something that you just go out there and just harvest. You have to grow them. I mean, you have to farm chickens, but they're animals. It's not the way that you would farm a plant that you can grow and, create a bigger field that you just, irrigate so you can water it to have more grow. These animals just take time to grow. And if you just feel that you need to pump out the quote unquote product because there's the demand for it, then you'll just let these chickens grow for like a few months. And then they're just like this little infant chicken that you just kill and then eat and then kill and eat, but then not fully finish eating, like I'm saying, and then just throw it away. So it's stuff like that. I don't want this to be any kind of just like save the animals. And I'm not mocking that either, because in a sense, that's what I'm saying. That's the approach that I have in a lot of ways. But I want to just discuss this from all sides so that we're not getting people like pitted against anything with it, yeah, I just want to talk about this, how it's happening in modern 2025. Because I'm kind of on all ends, I mean, I get it. I get the necessity of eating meat in certain places and for certain reasons. But I also love animals, and ideally, we treat them well. And so it's, it's kind of just an all sides kind of thing. But yeah, man, I mean, you've got just this need to pump out chickens. That's a big one, and with cows, you've got this need to just get steaks on the shelves, and so people kind of just go to the extremes to just make that happen. And then we get into things getting unnatural and stuff. And we can talk about that. Not that I'm avoiding that within this episode. Definitely not avoiding that at all. But like as far as including it within this episode, I'm not necessarily like trying to save that for later or anything. But just like, I don't know for sure how much I'm going to talk about with this. Because this can get just so broad. Not that that's wrong, but it's just this could be a long discussion. Not that that's wrong. So... yeah, but when we're talking about looking at meat as a product rather than as nutrients, that's what ends up happening. So, yeah. I think we just need to get as in touch with our bodies as we can in every aspect and to every degree, because then we just know why we're eating. I think a big part of what happens is people don't even know. It's like what I was saying about it's an event. People just say, well, you wake up and you eat breakfast, and we've heard that it's the most important meal of the day. And that's not just cut and dry the case. And that might not at all be the case, actually. And then, they usually people will go to work and then they eat lunch and then come home and then they'll eat dinner and then they'll go to bed. We hear like these 3 square meals a day. That's what I've heard all growing up, and I don't do that at all now. And now my body actually works how it's designed to, and so it's like, we got to just be in touch with our own bodies and not eat because it's something that we feel that we just are supposed to do, but do it for the reasons that we eat, which is to give our bodies nutrients when they call for it and like ask us for it, and that's something that's so foreign to a lot of people. It was foreign to me until I started to get really in touch with allowing my body to work in the Image Clothing Company. So yeah, vegetarianism, man, it really does help you get in touch with your own body, because just being able to know what it means to fully chew your food is a huge one. And I remember eating steaks, just how hard it was to chew. It was kind of like this almost wanting to get it over with, even though I was still, for whatever reason it was, like excited to eat the steak, right? And it might have just been because, like I was saying, people were like, we're gonna have steaks tonight. And it just like, I don't know, it's a cultural thing more than anything when it's said that way. But I remember once you put meat in your mouth, you just like chewing it. It's like, man, I almost just want to get this over with. And so you swallow it before it's anywhere near thoroughly chewed. I remember like my jaw muscles, dude. I felt my jaw muscles like getting super fatigued just trying to eat. And okay, well that's a big thing, because within the Image Clothing Company, we talk about the positions that we eat in, and I don't eat in any unnatural positions anymore because I'm aware of that it's unnatural, and I I feel it within the position of my jaw and my shoulders and everything, and sitting down at a chair height that I don't ever do when I eat, if I have like a say over that. So yeah, I just remember though that the feeling of the fatigue within my jaw muscles when I'd be chewing meat. That doesn't seem normal. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know how much of that is just the position though, sitting down when you eat, because I'm not doing that anymore as of now, to where I don't know for sure if that's what it is or what. But anyway, vegetarianism, very beneficial for the body. All my opinions aside, it is. So yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, just because a lot of people talk about their relationship with food, and that's a really common thing. People can get a very unhealthy relationship with food for emotional reasons and for a lot of reasons, digestive reasons, and then, reasons once you're trying to have the food come out after it's been processed, constipation and stuff. A lot of people on those ends of things, that's what can create people having pretty poor relationships with food, is things like constipation. And again, just meat being what it is, it's something to it's something that's really hard to not have constipation come from after having eaten meat. It really just is. So yeah, I want to I want to be able to recommend being vegetarian without somebody trying to like, I mean, I don't care. People are going to react how they're going to react to whatever I say. That's fine. But I want people to hear what I'm discussing for the sake of, there's a point to me discussing something. And I'd love for people to be open to seeing what vegetarianism would do to their body. No view that you have to have on animals any certain way, on any certain end, to any certain degree. But yeah, really what it does to the body's function. Yeah. Yeah, man. The thing with being an American is this isn't Americans, man, they like to say that this is like our country and we founded this country, and yeah, in a way, and yeah, it was founded on a lot of beautiful freedoms from other human beings, is what I mean, but there was a lot of stuff that happened that, as this country got founded, there's people that were already here. They got a little bit kicked to the side, and that's the thing is the reason well, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I'm saying that within right now, but when I was talking about, taking the life of an animal to use it for food and being like very grateful for it, when we talk about the native people who lived where it is now the United States of America, we would call them Native Americans, right? We used to call them Indians, and then this whole cultural, this whole politically correct garbage came in, and just the people who lived here. We're all just human beings, is the point with the whole calling it garbage of politically correctness. But a lot of times I try to be, just so people will not shut their ears before they hear the truth that I'm saying, right? Because I don't need to be politically correct to be able to be respectful, because I'm not trying to please other people. But in order to have people be open-minded enough to hear me, like, the people turn stuff off so quick if they hear something that triggers them. I understand why that is, but ideally we're not that way because we're individuals. But yeah, just the people who lived here before what is now Americans, quote unquote, founded this country, they were so in touch, man. I mean, the Native Americans, dude, they'd because there used to be so many bison. We have bison here, barely now. A lot of animals, I think it's so much more common for animals to be going extinct than people realize. There's so many species that aren't around that were just very, very recent. I mean, within the past years, and then the past decades, and then definitely past hundreds of years, so many animals have gone extinct because of what humans have done. Again, no opinions to that, no whatever that I'm trying to push, but just that's really what's happening. It really, really is. I mean, it is. A lot of times we just don't know it because it doesn't get talked about very often. But that's just really the case. And when the Native Americans were eating bison and using bison for whatever they used them for, they'd use everything. I mean, they'd use every part of the animal they killed, and they'd be so respectful about it. Now, there's different tribes of these native, quote-unquote, Native Americans, as far as just the people that were on this continent before the current people. I mean, yeah, you got different people that were here. It's not just like they were all just these. I think that's something that gets talked about all the time too. Like, they were all just these blissful Native Americans, and I mean, there's people, but within a lot of those people, they definitely use their resources wisely, and they would like give a lot of thanks for the animal, because that's what you're doing when you go hunting, unless you're hunting for sport, which that's an entirely different thing. But when you go hunt to eat, you're hunting to sustain your physical being, and you're taking another life to do that. And so when people who understand that out of necessity, because if not, they wouldn't survive, are the ones that are hunting, those are the people who normally, yeah, they really are just like very grateful for the ability to live another day because they have nutrition. That's really what it is. So I think, yeah, what I was saying, that's why I was saying what I was saying. We live in such a consuming society. People don't even know where their food's coming from. Whether you're eating meat or not, it doesn't matter what you're eating. People don't know where their food even comes from. They don't know what it takes to get that to be what it is. I mean, oh gosh, I mean, it's crazy. I've talked to people before, just in like a natural, authentic conversation about whatever it was, and they didn't know that steak was a cow. They thought it was just steak. Like, they thought it was just that thing that is labeled X. Like, uh, when people eat chicken, I've definitely heard people, I really actually have, like, not know that this was a bird. It's just they think of it as the food that is labeled chicken. and they don't realize that that was once an animal, right? So when we're talking, when I'm saying I'm trying to come at this just like from any and all sides to just discuss it, that's what I mean is this happens. This literally, I mean, I have actual experiences in my past where this has happened within conversation with other human beings. And not just like a really young kid who just doesn't really understand it yet, but just people. As far as like somebody who definitely has every ability to know the origin of this packaged flesh. So that's kind of, one thing I really want to be very sure to say clearly is a lot of it's just the intent, no matter who loves animals to the point of whatever, or who thinks this or that on whatever end, really everything comes down to intention and why we're doing what we're doing, and realizing that things are resources and things are given to us, and we really actually have a finite amount of things. And this is where it's the paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ, right? We don't actually lack anything. With a good shepherd, we lack no good things, right? But at the same time, our resources are limited in our earthly understandings. Like, yeah, our God can do anything with nothing and everything with nothing. But he wants us to understand that we need to use our resources wisely, and we're not. As a society, I'm not saying it's me that's not, I'm not saying it's him that's not, or her that's not, but as a broad spread society, that's just what's happening within the world of 2025. So, all right, that's good. I'm gonna leave us at that with my discussion on vegetarianism. I'm very grateful for this because this took a lot of different sides in a beautifully, just kind of comprehensively discussed kind of way. I'm very grateful for that. So, okay, like I said, it is the 4th of January, 2025. Yeah, it's not 2024 anymore. My name is Evan Strong. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. As In the Image Clothing Company, we are a clothing company after all. That's why it is in our name. We will have clothing available made out of 100% natural materials, just allowing the body to work, staying centered, fitting correct, and it'll be great. There's no kind of like false promise in that or overselling something. It's just, that's the only reason we'd sell it. So with saying that, that's the only reason we'd sell it, is to allow the body to work. If you ever purchase In the Image Clothing Company clothing, ever, try all that you can do to get it in your size, because it's common for people to wear clothing much too oversized, and that will just damage your body. So please do not purchase In the Image Clothing Company clothing ever with the intent to purchase it oversized. Please. We got to allow the body to work in everything that we do. That's why we are the company that we are, titled what we are as far as a clothing company, is because the only thing that has the extent of effect on our bodies to the degree that it does, as far as the highest degree out of anything, is clothing. So, okay. Thank you.